In the Gospel story of Mark chapter 10, verses 17 through 30, Jesus is paid a compliment by a rich young man. Since all Bible reading is necessarily cross-cultural communication, with all the dangers of misunderstanding found in it, what is really going on in this story? Please take a moment to stop the video and read the Gospel passage of Mark chapter 10, verses 17 through 30. Then restart the video and let's discuss the following subjects from this section. How did Jesus take public compliments? What were compliments perceived as in Jesus' social world? What did it mean to be rich or wealthy in the Bible? What was the problem with the rich young man? Last time we spoke about how asking questions to someone in the Bible doesn't work the same way it does in our 21st century Western cultural world. In the cultural world of Jesus, questions were challenges to a person's honor. They were seen as attacks. And Jesus often responds to these attacks in culturally suitable ways, by dodging and counterattacking with an insult or insulting question. The story of the greedy young man and Jesus, found in Mark chapter 10, verses 17 to 31, presents a rare, non-hostile question given to Jesus. The questioner in this instance is a young Israelite male who, before asking, takes precautions to show Jesus and the public watching that he is not being hostile. In fact, he goes out of his way to show that he is not a hostile questioner, unlike the Pharisees back in verse 2. Theirs was a negative honor challenge, an attack meant to humiliate Jesus and destroy his public reputation. But in contrast to his enemies, this young man does not attack Jesus. Instead, he kneels down, signifying his lower social position compared to Jesus the holy man. This is something else because later we learn this is a rich young man, a man who is actually socially higher than a Galilean peasant. Jesus, despite his holy man shamanic status, was a poor Galilean villager. The young man compliments Jesus. However, compliments are tricky in the cultural world of the Gospels.
A compliment is a positive honor challenge. Now, you have to know that you've been challenged, and you have to know by how much. And you now have a couple of options. If you don't respond, we know you're a coward. And if the public is watching, you just lost face. You could decide, I've been challenged by that much, and you could respond in equal measure. Now the playing field is level again, and we can go on with our conversation. Or you might decide to one-up me. Now I gotta know that I've been challenged. So positive challenges come in the form of gifts and compliments.
The young man's greeting "Good Master," although certainly not an attack, is still a positive honor challenge. And the Middle Eastern Jesus must respond to this cultural challenge in kind, and he does so.
You call somebody on the telephone and you get this long string of compliments. And you have to respond in kind. And I have a very dear friend in Bay Jala. He will call me up in the morning and he will say things like, Dick, the sun did not rise this morning till I heard your voice. I mean, to an American that sounds corny as the dickens. You know, and he gives me 3 or 4 of these. Well, I've got to come back with 3 or 4 of these, or the conversation can't proceed in a proper fashion.
But also the compliment signals aggression. Compliments in this culture imply that the complimented person has tried to rise above other people to their detriment. You see, there is no such thing as upward mobility in Jesus' social world. In fact, in his society, whenever somebody gets ahead, everyone else is considered to have fallen behind. Life is a zero-sum game in the world of Jesus. To go from starving Galilean peasant nothing person to shamanic holy man, folk healer, teaching wisdom is a bizarre advancement that must be explained. Also notice how the young man pays Jesus the compliment very publicly and without taking any proper precaution. This could be interpreted in Jesus' culture as envy, revealing the evil eye. One can frequently suspect that the questioner envies the named qualities in the other person and secretly wishes these beneficial qualities destroyed. That is how envy works in the cultural world of the Bible. So, forced by cultural rules, Jesus must deflect and knock down the aggressive accusation from the inexperienced young man. He does this by denying any special quality of the sort that might give offense to others. Theologians love to make a big deal out of Jesus' response, but there's nothing theological or Christological to be found in it. It's just interpersonal dynamics and proper honor-shame cultural humility. In the biblical world, whenever an honorable person gets challenged, he pushes away the challenge and diffuses any accusation that might fuel the position of his enemies. Again, the younger, more inexperienced Middle Eastern male does not intend to negatively challenge Jesus, and Jesus serves back a counter-question that diffuses any problems and envy. No one is good but God alone. Next time, we will explore Jesus' own challenge to the young man, and the sad response that terminates the exchange. Previously, we spoke about the story of the greedy young man and Jesus found in Mark chapter 10, verses 17 to 31. This story is featured in all three synoptic gospels, but only Mark mentions that Jesus loved the young man. Love in Mediterranean culture means active and practical attachment to someone or some group. The young man claimed that he lived a morally complete life since his youth, and this stirred Jesus' affection toward him, so much so that Jesus wanted the young man to join him and his political faction. But here is where American Bible readers get thrown off. We Westerners are spuriously familiar with Jesus' advice, "Go sell what you have." We mistake Jesus for talking about economics, the driving force in our Western lives. Jesus wasn't talking economics here. Jesus is a Mediterranean man speaking to another Mediterranean man. So we need to drop our typically Western economic interpretations and understand what drove that culture. Go sell what you have meant, in context, to part ways with the most precious of all Mediterranean possessions: family, home, and land. Jesus was not demanding that the young man cash in his stock portfolio, empty his bank accounts, or dispose of other similar Western treasures. To follow Jesus, one must die to his in-group self. That is, he must break all ties with his family, home, and land. Only then can he become part of the Jesus in-group self. And Jesus' followers already did that. We don't have to speculate that Jesus is not talking about economics here. That he is speaking about leaving family is clearly spelled out in the following discussion, verses 23 to 30. Again, Peter and the other followers have left everything. And Jesus says, "There is no one who has left house, or brothers, or sisters, or mother, or father, or children, or lands, for my sake and the gospel, who will not be compensated." That's very important, because it makes following Jesus in his context possible. Because in a collectivistic society where family and kinship ties are essential conditions for life itself, Jesus' challenge to the young man to leave everything, leave his family and his home and his lands, amounts to social suicide. It is truly a death. His exhortation is morally impossible to fulfill without some compensating factors. And wisely, the Mark in Jesus states these compensating factors immediately. If the young man dies to his family, if he leaves family, home, and lands, he will have treasure in Sky Vault, which means that the patron God of Israel will replace the sources of sustenance that this person willingly sacrifices. And Jesus, bidding him to come follow me, promises the young man fellowship in a new community, a new group self, a fictive family to replace his old family of flesh and blood. And this is what Jesus has been creating throughout this gospel called Mark, his own political faction. The young man certainly perceived that Jesus desired him to join his coalition and clearly understood the sacrifice Jesus demanded but would replace. Understandably, but regrettably, and with great sorrow, the young man rejects both of Jesus' offers and departs, proving that he was greedy. The conclusion of this episode instructs us Western Bible readers about the ancient Mediterranean understanding of the word rich. The problem for this man was not his many possessions. Instead, it was his unwillingness to share that caused his problems. His unwillingness, his refusal to give to those who had less than he, those who could not defend their honor, the poor. Because of this reason, wherever the word rich appears in your English Bible, scratch it out and put greedy. That's the more appropriately rendered word. This man was not simply wealthy, but also greedy. And in the Bible, those who have surplus and do not share it are considered to be either thieves or heirs of thieves. That's pretty much how the ancient Mediterranean world viewed rich people who refused to be patrons. The disciples are shocked to hear that the greedy rich have no advantage when it comes to dealing with the God of Israel. Who then can be saved? In Mediterranean culture, the greedy rich want for nothing because they surround themselves with clients who supply their needs, including the most important need of all for Mediterraneans, an honorable reputation. Clients of Mediterranean patrons become their propaganda machines, spreading the word about their benefactors and their good fortune, which is far more important than economics in the ancient world. Honor is everything. But Jesus says, as far as the God of Israel is concerned, this kind of honor, the honor that men give other men, counts for nothing. Still, Jesus is all about honor. The honor that he cares about is that given by God. Those like Jesus' followers who have severed ties with blood relationships and freely embraced a reversal of status in an honor-shamed society which thrives on status will receive a double reward, 100 times return, with persecutions in this life and eternal life in the age to come. Jesus is all about status reversal. But its status reversal is an interesting thing. For people who were lowly, who suddenly have a status reversal and are respected high with the honor of God, well, that sounds great. But for those who are elites, greedy and powerful, who are toppled from their honorable position, that might generate in them a violent response. How does the promise of Jesus in this episode resonate with American concerns for immediate gratification and a here and now payoff?